All right, today we're going to talk about one of the most incredible and honestly controversial pieces of military hardware out there, the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD. For the longest time, it was this multi-billion-dollar experiment, but now it's a combat-proven reality. So we're going to break down how it works, why it's such a big deal, and yeah, what it costs.
You hear this phrase all the time when people talk about THAAD, and it's a perfect analogy for what is an almost unbelievable task. I mean, think about it. Intercepting a ballistic missile screaming through the upper atmosphere at thousands of miles an hour by literally smashing another object into it.
For more than 20 years, this whole thing was basically a super high-stakes science experiment. It was this crazy idea, born back in the late 80s, that was pushing the absolute limits of physics. For years, it was really more of a theory you'd see on test ranges than a weapon you could actually count on. And then everything changed. 2022 rolls around, and this theoretical shield gets used in actual combat for the first time ever. It went from being a promising, if troubled, experiment to a weapon with a real-world track record. Okay, so what exactly is this system? Let's peel back the layers and take a look at the machine behind the shield. At its heart, THAAD is a purely defensive system. Think of it as the ultimate goalie. It's designed to be the very last line of defense against incoming ballistic missiles. And its unique specialty is intercepting them way, way up high. We're talking the edge of space, right as they're coming down in the final moments of their flight. That's the terminal part of its name. Now, a THAAD battery isn't just one thing. It's a team of 4 parts working together in perfect sync. It all starts with the eyes, the unbelievably powerful AN/TPY2 radar. It spots the threat and tracks it. That data gets fed to the brain of the operation, the fire control station. This is where all the complex math happens, calculating an intercept point in seconds. Then the brain gives the order to a mobile launcher, which fires the interceptor missile. And here's the secret sauce, what makes this whole thing so special. Unlike older systems that are basically like a big shotgun in the sky, they explode near a target and hope the shrapnel does the job. THAAD uses hit-to-kill technology. The interceptor has no explosive warhead at all. Its only weapon is its own speed and mass. It just flies directly into the path of the incoming missile and obliterates it with sheer kinetic force. That's the bullet hitting the bullet. And to pull that off, you have to be moving at an absolutely insane speed. The THAAD interceptor rips through the sky at over Mach 8. That's more than 6,300 miles per hour. It has to be that fast because the target it's chasing is also moving at hypersonic speeds. But, a weapon this advanced doesn't just appear out of thin air. The journey from just an idea to an actual combat system was long, incredibly expensive, and frankly, filled with failure. The real push for THAAD came from the battlefield. During the Gulf War, the whole world watched as Iraq's Scud missiles rained down on Saudi Arabia and Israel. The Patriot missile systems they had at the time had, let's say, mixed results. It was a wake-up call that showed a huge gap in high-altitude defense. It became brutally clear they needed something better. And this just shows you how ridiculously hard this was. The first tests were a complete disaster. I mean, look at this, 6 straight failures, one after another. Software bugs, mechanical problems, you name it, it went wrong. The program was bleeding money and almost got canceled entirely. But then, in June of '99, they finally got it right. 2 successful intercepts in a row proved the whole hit-to-kill concept wasn't science fiction. It was actually possible. So once the technology was finally proven, THAAD graduated from the testing range and stepped onto the world stage. And that's when it became more than just a weapon. It became a powerful piece on the global chessboard, and a really controversial one at that. And that's the central question, isn't it? If that is just a shield, if it's only designed to shoot things down, why does it cause so much friction every time it gets deployed somewhere? Well, let's look at the deployment to South Korea back in 2017. The official reason from the US and South Korea was pretty straightforward. They said, hey, North Korea is building more and better missiles, so we need a better defense. The goal was to create this layered shield over the country. On paper, a purely defensive move. But that is not how China saw it. Not at all. For Beijing, the issue wasn't the interceptors. It was that powerful AN/PPY2 radar. They argued that its radar could peer deep into Chinese territory, tracking their own missile tests. They were afraid it would give the US a huge strategic advantage, basically undermining China's nuclear deterrent and tilting the whole security balance in the region. So, after all those years as a political chess piece, the time finally came for THAAD to stop being a theory and prove what it could do in a real war. The system's combat story kicks off in January 2022. A battery operated by the UAE scored the first ever combat kill, taking down a Houthi missile. And things just escalated from there. In late 2024, the US sent a battery to Israel, and by mid-2025, it was being used heavily in the 12-day war. But the system also showed it wasn't invincible. In early 2026, a THAAD radar in Jordan was reportedly destroyed by an Iranian strike. The scale of its use in that 2025 conflict was just mind-blowing. U.S. forces reportedly fired over 150 interceptors in just a couple of days. A system that had barely been used in combat was suddenly being fired at a pace almost nobody had ever planned for.
And to put that number in perspective for you, those 150-plus interceptors made up roughly a quarter of the entire U.S. stockpile of THAAD missiles. A single short conflict suddenly raised this huge critical question about whether America could even sustain a fight using these high-end missiles.
And this brings us to the final and maybe the most difficult part of the THAAD story, its incredible cost. The price for just one THAAD battery, with the radar, the launchers, the command station, the whole shebang, is around $1 billion. Billion with a B. It's one of the most expensive conventional weapon systems the Army has. And that's just to buy the hardware. Every single time you fire one of these things, you're launching a missile that costs over $12 million. So firing 150 of them, like what happened in 2025, well, that's nearly $2 billion just in the missiles that were fired. So, in the end, THAAD proved it can do the impossible. It can hit a bullet with a bullet. It's a technological marvel that went from a string of embarrassing failures to a battle-tested shield. But all that diplomatic baggage, its own vulnerabilities, and that astronomical price tag all lead to this fundamental question for our time. What is the true price of security? And is it a price we can really afford to pay?